What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to talk about the Buchardt P300 Bookshelf Speaker. This is a brand new speaker that just came out recently, and it's part of Buchardt's more affordable lineup. So off to my left and right in white, I have the S400 MK2, which is their top of the line passive bookshelf speaker. And here in front of me is the P300 in blue, which is the new more affordable range. They also come in black and white if you want that more traditional look, as well as a few more unique color options, as you can see on the screen behind me now. Personally, I think the yellow looks the best, but I'd be curious, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. So we'll do this review the same way we generally do. I'll tell you about some specs and standout features. I'll throw the main ones on screen so you guys can check that out. I'll tell you what the speaker sounds like. We'll do some comparisons. We're definitely going to recommend it to Buchardt's own S400 MK2. That's probably what you guys are most curious about. A lot of you probably clicked on this video wondering, hey, is this going to get me S400 MK2 sound on a budget? We're going to talk about it. We'll find out. We'll compare it to some other speakers as well, and then we'll wrap up the video. So first and foremost, some standout features. Obviously, the color options. This is like a unique, not unique, but this is a new thing Buchardt is doing. In the past, if you wanted one of their speakers, your options were black or white, or every now and then they would do like a limited edition model that had a real nice veneer on it, but there was quite the upcharge. Those were generally special edition models. So it's pretty cool to see here. The colors do cost a bit more than the plain Jane black and white. I think they're only $50 more though, which isn't much for a color option. Some other standout features in my opinion are going to be just the fact that these look almost identical to the more expensive Big Brother. Around back, we have a binding post that is just a little bit lower in terms of, quality that you would see on the S400 MK2. That's got that nice metal terminal plate. Here it's more just a standard off-the-shelf binding post, nothing fancy. In the front, the woofer has been replaced. This is a different model. I wouldn't call it a downgrade actually, because it has some areas where it's actually, you'll see when we get to the S400 MK2 versus P300 comparison, but it's got some things it could do that are pretty cool. The tweeter and waveguide below are carried over from the S400 MK2. The crossover in this unit is all new, and that's the area where they probably save the most money. So what does it sound like? So I've been using Buchardt speakers as my daily drivers for a long time now. I was part of the original pre-order for the S400. I might have been one of the first people in the United States to get a pair of the original S400. After that, when the Mark II came out, I got my hands on those, and those continue to be my daily drivers. And just to be clear, I own speakers that are much, much more expensive, like the Focal Canta #1, Dynaudio Special 40, and so on. But I choose to use the Buchardt S400 MK2 as my daily driver because I love the sound so much. So when I saw Buchardt came out with this new, more affordable version, you bet your ass I was real curious. What does, $600-700 less get you from the same company, right? I mean, it looks nearly identical. Does it sound identical, right? So let's start with the top end. We've got a top end that's going to be a little bit on the dark side of neutral. However, depending on how you set these up in your room, your mileage may vary. And what I mean by that is traditionally, or normally, typically I should have said, I suppose, tongue twisters. Normally, the way I set up speakers in my room is, for the most part, they're pointing straight out into the room. I very rarely toe them in a whole lot. If I do, it's just a little bit. And when I set the P300s up like that, I was like, these are a little dark, even darker than the original S400s. And I was like, that's weird. Let's toe them in a little bit. And the more I towed them in, the more they opened up. So that's something to keep in mind. If you're the type of person that likes to have your speakers just point straight forward into the room, and you're more of like a form over function kind of guy, just keep that in mind. So I kept turning them in, and I reached the point that I had the speakers pointing at my shoulders, and that's when they opened up the most, where I really like that top end, that treble. Moving down to the mid-range, it's very similar to the S400's mid-range, where it's going to be on the warmer side of neutral. Obviously, the bass of the speaker is going to be really powerful, being a Buchardt speaker. We'll talk about that in a second. And that mid-range is going to be warm. It is going to be richer. It is going to have that like heaviness to it, that full sound, that confidence that Buchardt is known for. Moving down to the bass overall, this is where things get a little bit more interesting. So remember how I told you the treble, it's going to be dependent on how much you toe these things in. The bass is very dependent on how far you can give these things breathing room from your back wall. Hear me out, guys. If you're the type of guy well, not the type of guy, but if your living arrangement is such that you are limited on how much you can bring a speaker out from the main wall, this might not be for you because these bad boys need breathing room. I found in my room about 40 inches front baffle to rear wall sounded best. If I moved them back even an inch or two, like say 38, 39 inches away from the back wall, it wasn't enough. Bass was, I'll put it like this. If you can't give them enough clearance, the bass is going to overload the room. It's going to sound like it has poor transient response. It's just going to sound terrible overall. All the words we use to describe good bass, you are not going to get from the speaker if it's too close from the wall. But when you give it breathing room, its note-to-note distinction is actually a little bit better than the S400 Mark II. It's a fuller sound than the S400 Mark II. It seemed to me to have more bass by about 2 decibels, which is quite a bit. It is very noticeable. So this speaker bangs a little harder in the bass region. And I think what's going on there is because this speaker, the P300, has more bass than the S400 Mark II, it needs a little bit more breathing room. So, you know, if you can't do that, you probably want to look at the S400 Mark II and not the P300. Let's jump into some comparisons. Oh, before we do that, you guys probably want to know about like soundstage imaging and, you know, all those things. Look, it's a Buchardt speaker. It's going to sound, the soundstage is going to be really big. Not quite as big as its bigger brother, well, more expensive brother, the S400 Mark II. It's going to image very well, though I did feel the S400 Mark II imaged a little bit better. So look, staging is big. Buchardt is really good at that, so you don't have to worry there. How does it compare to the more expensive S400 Mark II overall, though? So I use this speaker on a wide variety of amplifiers. I use the $1,000 Emotiva TA2, the Hagel H190 that is in the neighborhood of, I think, $4,350. My Kinky Studio separates that are right around $7,000. And of course, Thomas & Stereo's Galleon TS120 Special Edition Tube Amplifier. This is what I found. If you're using the P300 and you're doing an A-B comparison versus the S400 Mark II, and you're using budget equipment, figure amplifiers in the neighborhood of $500 to $1,500, like the Emotiva TA2 I've got right here. Great amp, by the way. We're going to review that soon. You'll find that the two speakers are more similar than different. You'll definitely notice the S400 Mark II is a little bit more open, a little bit more clarity, a little bit more detail on the top end. You'll notice the P300 has a little bit of a fuller sound, a little bit stronger bass, slightly better note-to-note distinction. But for the most part, the two speakers will sound very similar. And what's going on there is the more affordable budget gear is going to push the P300 and the S400 just fine, but the S400 Mark II has a much higher performance ceiling than the P300 have. That's what those few hundred dollars more get you. So when we step up to a more expensive amp, like the Thomas & Stereo Galleon, like the Hagel H190, like my Kinky Studio mono blocks that are $7,000 for the whole shebang, now things get a little different. The gap between the S400 Mark II and the P300 starts to widen quite a bit. The P300 will start to sound a little bit closed off, and the S400 Mark II will start to sound a whole lot more open and expansive. Again, it costs more for a reason, and that's not to say the P300 has bad treble or anything like that. That's not the case. It's just going to reach its limit of performance sooner than the more expensive S400 Mark II. Moving down to the mid-range, both do really well, but on the more expensive amplifiers, the S400 Mark II had more bloom and tonal richness in the mid-range, especially with human voices. Moving down to the bass, on the more expensive amplifiers, the P300 actually started to shine a little bit more here. This was interesting. So again, the P300 has the fuller, confident, stronger bass than the S400 Mark II, which really surprised me. Usually it's the more expensive model that has the more bass. And the P300, its note-to-note distinction being a little bit better than the Mark II became a little bit more than just a little bit. I wouldn't say a lot, or it was a night and day difference, because the S400 Mark II's bass is very, very good. It's very high quality bass, and I like it a lot. But I couldn't help but notice the P300 Mark II, not Mark II, geez, the P300, with the more expensive amplifiers, its slightly better bass, its slightly better note-to-note distinction was quite a bit improved, and that was one area where I could see the bigger difference. So I'll leave you with this. if your budget for an amplifier or what you've already got is on the affordable side, you don't have any plans to upgrade, you're sitting between $500 to $1,500 for your amplifier, you're probably going to want to go for the P300, especially if you could accommodate the space it needs from the back wall. If you can't accommodate the space it needs from the back wall, you're going to want to go for the slightly more expensive S400 MK2. Now, if your amplifiers are a little bit more expensive and you want to make sure you're getting the best sound you can out of your speakers, figure you got amplifiers $3,000 or more, again, you probably want to go for the S400 MK2 there. So P300, really good option, but the S400 MK2 is also a very good option, and you want to make sure you choose based on what you can and can't accommodate. Just, you know, for your guys' information, I use the S400 MK2 in my room about 30 inches from the front wall. The P300 needed about 40 inches from the front wall, and we're talking front baffle to rear wall, okay? So that's the space I needed. My room has 9-foot ceilings. It's 12 feet wide. No, 14 feet wide, 12 feet deep. So let's see. Surely you guys want to hear me compare this speaker to other speakers. Let's talk about the KEF LS50 Meta. It is a little bit more expensive, but I think some of you guys might cross shop, you know, the two. So KEF LS50 Meta is going to be a lot smaller. It's a short speaker. KEF LS50 Meta is going to come up to about here on the P300, so do keep that in mind. The KEF LS50 Meta is a great speaker, but the P300 being a little bit larger is going to be able to play in a little bit of a larger room than the LS50 Meta. A common complaint I've heard of the LS50 Meta is from guys that have rooms that are like 20 by 30 feet, and they're like, this speaker is not good. It can't play that loud. And it's like, no, it can. You just got it in a room that's way too big for how small it is, because the LS50 Meta driver is only about 5 1/4. Here we've got a 6-inch. So what's the difference in sound though? That's what you really want to know. So P300 is going to be on the darker side of neutral in the treble, where the LS50 Meta is going to be a little bit more on the forward side of neutral, and that's even if you toe the P300s in towards your shoulders or directly at your eardrums. The KEF LS50 Meta has the more open, expansive, clarity-focused treble. I'm going to give the win to the LS50 Meta in the treble region, no doubt. Moving down to the mid-range, the two speakers start to be very different. Well, they're already different. They're super different, actually. The LS50 Meta's mid-range is going to be more about that like cool, neutrality, open, expansive, very clear, whereas the P300 is going to be more of that warmer, tonally rich mid-range. Moving down to the bass, the speakers could not be more different. LS50 Meta hits real hard down to about 65 hertz in my room. After that, you're not getting any bass whatsoever. P300, on the other hand, it's a Buchardt product. It's got killer bass. Buchardt speakers in my room are strong down to 30 hertz. They pound out bass for days with quantity and quality. So it's just the easy win goes to the P300 in the bass department. Easy win for the LS50 Meta in the treble department, and the mid-range is going to be a toss-up based on your personal taste. Build quality on both speakers is really good too. Let's see what other speakers you might want to hear comparison about. These are around, you know, I think these are $1,400, $1,450 in the blue perhaps. It's an odd price. There's not a lot of speakers around that price. I haven't really reviewed anything that's like that price exactly. At like $1,100, we have the Focal, not 11, I think they're $1,000. There's the Focal Cora 806. That's a weird one because they're like half the price in Europe. I'll do the comparison just real quick. The Focal Cora 806 is a good speaker. It's a nice speaker. I like it a lot. P300 is pretty much better overall, but the Cora 806 is going to be good if you can get it more closer to that European price. It's going to have a lot more value there. It's going to be more clarity focused, more of a neutral analytical speaker, slightly forward in the treble, not a whole lot of bass. P300, again, darker in the treble, richer in the mid-range, tons and tons and tons more bass. So yeah, you know, I do have the ELAC UBR62s here. I have not put a lot of time on them, guys, so this is what I'll tell you. If you want to know how the P300 compare to the ELAC UBR62, I will talk about that when I review the ELAC UBR62. Again, I just haven't put a lot of time on those yet, so I can't really do that comparison. Looking around the room to see what else I got. Some of you guys are probably going to ask how it compares to the CSS Crichton 1TDs. Let's do that. So big price disparity here, obviously, but the CSS Crichton 1TD is a DIY kit. And when I made that video, I said, No speaker under $1,000 can really compete with it, and you're going to need to compare it to speakers over $1,000. So the P300 is $1,400. The CSS Crichton 1TD is about $700. Of course, it's going to take your time and hard work to put it together. Let's do the comparison. So both speakers have a treble region that is on the darker side of neutral. So they're starting off similar. Both speakers have a mid-range that is going to be more warmer and richer. So again, a little bit similar. Moving down to the bass, both speakers are absolute bass monsters, so the two speakers are actually very similar. The difference is the CSS Crichton 1TD has a little bit of a higher performance ceiling, more like the S400 MK2. You continue to connect the CSS Crichton 1TD to more and more expensive gear, and it's going to start to pull ahead compared to the P300. Meaning like that treble is going to open up a little more. It's going to give you a little more detail retrieval. That mid-range is going to be richer, more organic, and the bass extension and power of the Crichton 1TD is extremely impressive with very good articulation and control. And that's not to say the P300 is comparable to a $700 speaker. Absolutely not. Those of you that watched my CSS Crichton 1TD video, I made it very clear. It's a DIY speaker, you know what I mean? So you're saving quite a bit. If you want to buy the 1TDX model directly from CSS already assembled, I believe it's about $2,400. So labor, assembly, shipping the larger finished speaker, that all cost money for manufacturers, guys. I think that wraps up the comparisons. If there's a comparison you wanted to hear that I didn't cover, this YouTube channel does have a free Discord. You're welcome to hop in there and ask. I'll leave a link in the description below. You can also ask me in the YouTube comments section, but I'll be honest, I don't really love conversing in the YouTube comments section. It's like I get like an email alert and then I got to hit reply. It's just not the best place. Do hop in the free Discord though. We have a lot of fun there. If you have any questions or if there was anything I didn't cover about the speaker, ask in the comments, ask in my free Discord, guys. Until next time, later.